Hi everyone, Mr. Silball here, and this is the recording for Module 1, Markup Language and Site Development Essentials. This is day 9 of the unit. Alright, so in the last class, what we talked about making sure you have a plan before you even begin your website. It's very important that you have an idea of how your website's going to look and how it's going to flow before you even actually start coding it. You want to make sure you wireframe first, and then you storyboard all of the elements as you go along. And it's important to involve all applicable parties in the process, anyone who's going to be using your website or those people who are in the company that are going to have inside information on how best to make your website work better for them and for the consumer if you're making something for a business. And you also must account for any regional or cultural differences that you may run into when you are designing your website. So when you are doing your website, you want to make sure that you obtain information from your stakeholders. These are the people that can give you the following. They can give you how the purpose of the website, how it should look, the look and feel. I mean, you can't really feel it, but like whenever you look at a website, how does it make you feel? And so that's what they're going for here. Any services that the audience may require, the funds available. You know, you may think that web design is just you sit there and you code until it's created, but you know, if you want additional features, there's some money involved in actually making a website. So make sure you keep that in mind if this is something you want to pursue in the future, because you can make some money with designing websites. And you also want to make sure you have any timelines. If the stakeholders want you to have your website done within a certain time, you want to make sure that's done, because otherwise they can, restrict payment from you and, other things that, you don't want to have happen to you. When you are designing a website, you are designing it for the people that are hiring you to do it. If you're making it for a company or a group of people, like you're a web designer, you want to make sure that you stick to those timelines. When you are working with stakeholders, you want to make sure that they are people who approve your project, but they usually don't have technical knowledge. They're still important because they're going to decide what's going to go on your website. You will design the website ultimately, but what they want is kind of what they go. Now, understand, you do have a little bit of ability to be flexible because of the fact that sometimes they're going to ask for stuff and you're going to be like, whoa, hold up a minute. So make sure you keep that in mind. Be prepared to explain any non-technical needs to a technical audience, okay? So keep that in mind that you, whenever you're developing your website, that you may run into an issue where your audience isn't that technical, and make sure you relay that to them in a way that they'll understand, and vice versa. Whenever they're communicating to you, make sure you understand what they're asking for as well. So who are you going to work with? This is assuming that you are working at a larger scale company or a larger scale web design. The stuff that I make you do is stuff that you can accomplish. It's for learning and it's basic and stuff. For larger websites, you're going to be doing a lot more and you're going to be a lot more involved. You want to make sure you work with someone who's going to be from the marketing department to help with your branding. How's it going to look? You're going to want someone from IT to help you with the servers and the network. You're going to want information from the representative from sales that gives you information on customers. And you're going to want members of the development team who's actually going to be creating and developing the website. Those are all of the people you're going to be working with in addition to your stakeholders. All right, so this is an example of a storyboard. Talked a little bit about this. This is for a much, much, much larger website. And all this does is show all of the pages. So you have your index right here. This is your home page, and then branches off into these pages. With that, you see there are sub pages below it, and then you see right below it, like this page right here has additional pages below it. The storyboard is used to show the website at a glance, and show how it's going to look overall. This is just one example of a storyboard. All right, one of the things I need to bring up now is the concept of a sitemap, and a sitemap is a brief hierarchical representation of websites, and it allows users and visitors to quickly identify areas of the website and move through it. Essentially, with the sitemap, what you're looking at is it is a list of all of the pages in the website, and it's listed hierarchically. So the index or the main page is at the top, and then below it is the next main pages, and then below it are any other sub pages, and it keeps going on and on and on down the line. So whenever you are designing your website for a company, you want to make sure you document and communicate your plan. You must document any decisions made in your meetings, and all plans must be distributed and approved. It's not just enough that you agree with it. You have to have everyone that's going to be involved with the process to read it and approve it, and then carry it through. You should communicate with people involved, such as calling, email, letters, faxes. However, email and paper-based transmissions are preferred. Email, especially in this day and age, is probably one of the most preferred methods of communication because you have a trail of it. As long as you save those emails and don't delete them, you'll be able to keep track of what people said and how they were involved. Some ways that you can communicate the plan: you can do oral presentations, such as a PowerPoint presentation software. That's the most common, as you know. Overhead projection, that's very old school. Whiteboards, easel and poster paper rather. Charts, published material, anything that you can hand out and give it to them, and then you go over with the audience. Ways to lead discussions: you want to make sure you make introductions. This whole slide is basically talking about if you are giving a presentation or doing a discussion with people, you want to make sure you introduce everyone that's on it so everyone knows who they're working with. You want to recall any past business, like if this is not the first time you've met. If you worked with each other in the past, what did you work on in the past, and kind of recall them of that. You want to make sure you create a list of action items or timelines. What is an item that needs to be done, and when does it need to be done by? Make sure you monitor your time as well, because when you do a discussion or a meeting, regardless if you're in web design or not, you always want to make sure you keep track of your time, and you don't want to waste anyone's time, which is the next kind of focus, which is ensuring focus. When you're talking with a group or the people that you're working with, you want to make sure you stay on topic and stay on track. You don't want to have any sidebar conversations and kind of lose the focus of what you're there for. Now, we hope that you don't have any heated discussions when you are in your meetings, but if it does come up, you want to make sure you squash that quickly, because that will take away time and will make your group lose focus. So just kind of like, that's for another time, or put an end to it quickly, especially if you're leading the group or you're leading the group. Another thing that you want to keep in mind with this as well, if you are losing focus, either end the meeting early or like you want to stop it as quickly as possible. If you're not leading the meeting, don't get involved, okay? If it's something, there are some battles that are worth fighting for, and there's others that you may just want to whatever, okay? Keep that in mind and pick your battles wisely when you're in a discussion like this. And at the end, you want to distribute the minutes, and this kind of gives everyone an opportunity to see what was discussed, especially if you have people who may have missed the meeting, and you can kind of, remind people of what was talked about, and remind people, oh hey, you said this in the meeting, so that way you have a record. You also want to make sure you consider technical and non-technical issues. Not everyone can communicate needs to each other, especially whenever you are working with non-technical people, or if you're working with more technical people and you may not know exactly what they're talking about. Some people do not have technical knowledge. Usually the non-technical people have your funding. Keep that in mind. Usually those people are the ones that are like, oh, I want this website, and I want sparkles and all this other fancy stuff. And you have to sometimes be like, okay, I can't do this, but I can give you this. So You want to make sure you make them happy because they usually have your funding and they're usually going to be the ones that pay you for a job well done. Everyone needs to have a voice. If you do have technical knowledge that you need to convey, make sure you convey it politely to the people who are not of a technical nature. To ensure clarity, make sure you're regularly asking for questions, or if you have people who look like deer in headlights, that you're addressing their needs, and you want to make sure that you kind of help them along and answer their questions if they have any. You want to make sure that you ask team members to summarize their understandings, like, okay, so you give them a task, and then you kind of at the end say, okay, so and so, what is your task for this? Tell me what you need to do. And that's just a nice way to kind of check and see if they were paying attention, and also check and see they understand what they're going to carry out. Another thing that you could do is ask a third party to deliver a summary of the progress. This is kind of optional, but if you're working for like a business and they want a report of your progress, and you give it to them, but they're not kind of happy with it, there may be a point where you need a third party, someone who's independent, to look and say, okay, here's what's going on. Okay. Because sometimes people may think, oh, you're just saying this because you want to spend more time and you want more money to do this. So sometimes a third party is kind of helpful because they're impartial and they're just saying, hey, here's what's going on. You want to make sure that you also write regular updates about the project. This is important for those people who are working in a business setting, that they give updates to the correct and proper people, so that they're kept in the loop and the project is going along smoothly. When you are developing the site, you want to make sure you create the markup code. You're going to test the functionality, make sure it works. You're going to approve the website, and you're going to publish the site. Now, if only it were that easy, as you know, this does take time, and each phase of this process does take up a significant amount of time. One of the things that I know you all know, because I say it all the time, is that you test your pages in multiple browsers. This is something that comes up on the certification exam, so make sure you understand this. Test your pages in multiple browsers. When I say this, and I think the next slide goes over it, different generations do different things. So an older version of Firefox may not work as well as a newer version, or what you code in one version may not look as well in the other. Write your code in HTML. Those are the standards. Remember, we use HTML5. You may not need to test, only if it is something internal, but you should still do it anyways. If it's going to be an intranet, where it's like a company's website where only members of the company can use it, because usually in those instances they'll have it already saved on the worker's desktop and they just have to click on it and go to it, but that's not always guaranteed. Sometimes people will access things at home, so keep that in mind, that you should still test it even if it's going to be something that's internally used. Alright, now as you know, we have multiple browsers. We have Chrome. It's an open source, good interface, crash recovery, sandboxing, isolated tabs, and privacy mode. This is one you're probably most familiar with. We have Firefox, also open source, used by Mac, Windows, and Linux. Edge, that's from Microsoft. That's the newer version, fairly new, and it's default on your Windows machines. We generally tend to avoid that one, but you should still test it out because there are some people who still use Edge. Or worse off, some people use Internet Explorer from Microsoft. Caution using Internet Explorer. That is the older version. It's Windows only. It was replaced by Edge, but older computers may still have it. Internet Explorer is not that great, but it does have its purposes, and some people prefer to use it, so keep that in mind when you're developing your websites. Opera, used by multiple systems. This is another one. It's an alternative browser, and it has extended language support. I've used Opera before in the past. It's not too bad. And then Lynx. Links is a command line text only browsers. Yes, these do exist. Where there's no pictures, it's just text. These are used by visually impaired individuals as it can be transcribed into voice, and that's the main reason behind links. All right, in summary, um, be open to people on your development team. Whenever you're designing your website, you want to make sure that you're communicating effectively and regularly with the people on your team. Make sure you help and support each other, and you communicate. That is critical to making sure that your project works successfully. Make sure that you use multiple web browsers to test your website. There are many more, and there's even many more that weren't even covered in this lecture. So please keep in mind that you test any potential that you think your users are going to use. All right, that's going to do it for this lesson.